Good morning, everyone. The theme for, I'm going to put up the theme for April 2021 is Step into the Unknown. The topic for today is the path less traveled. Ernest Holmes wrote, one of the outstanding things that Jesus taught was the mistakes of yesterday can be canceled, that God's creation is always taking place, and no matter what the experience of yesterday may have been, they can be changed. Richard Rohr wrote, Jesus's many parables of the kingdom lean heavily on the language of growth and development, such as the seed, the growing ear of corn, weeds and wheat growing together, and the rising of yeast, always about something new and good coming into being. Ernest Holmes also said, my entire thought, will, and imagination are saturated with the divine presence, which forever proclaims, behold, I make all things new. And as we breathe that in together, let us reflect on this affirmation of truth. I joyfully take the road of radical forgiveness to freedom. Thank you. Wow. And now it's my honor and privilege to introduce our beloved, inspired spiritual director, Reverend Dr. Kathleen Johnson.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you so much. That was just beautiful. So our theme kind of continues. It's a continuation of last month in some ways. Last month, the month of March, we embraced the visioning process as the path to making all things new within our lives, which is truly the path of personal transformation, of opening to the infinite possibilities by living in very powerful questions such as, what is God's highest idea of my life? What must I release in order to align with that? What must I become in order to align with that? As we live in those questions, we are truly taking the path of spiritual transformation. So this month we are stepping into the unknown, because the new and the possible is at this point in time unknown to us. We're making the leap in consciousness, making the leap and moving forward in that direction, pulled by the vision. And we could call this, and I love this title for today, the path less traveled. The path less traveled, because much of humanity has not completely embraced this at this point. I mean, I think we can look around and see that. And yet we know that we are being called. That's why we're here today, right? We are being called to that path less traveled, that path of spiritual evolution. And as the vision unfolds, as we take those steps, the next step unfolds. So each step of the way, we just see far enough to the next step often, and then we take the leap. We're courageous and we're bold, and we move in that direction, and then we grow and we develop as a result of that. So that's what this month is about, taking those steps into the unknown. And do you feel the excitement building? I'm feeling it. And particularly since today is Easter, it is a celebration that truly embodies what this is all about, stepping into the unknown. And Jesus the Christ modeled that in his life. I'm thinking about this Easter thing. And often, many of us have probably heard the traditional way of looking at this. And what I'm going to invite us to do is to look through the eyes of the mystical perspective, or the metaphysical perspective, which we call the New Thought perspective or Science of Mind perspective. And so as we look at this story and we look at Jesus's life in this way, we are given information for our own lives, for our own path, tools and practices that are important for us to use in order to progress. So Holmes proclaimed Jesus, the Christ, to be the most highly developed spiritual master the world has ever known. And this is confirmed, along with Buddha at the very least, by the work of Dr. David Hawkins when he measured consciousness, and consciousness on this planet going from 0 to 1,000. And Jesus and Buddha both reached that level before they left their bodies. They had reached that level of what we call the fully realized spiritual being, where there's no separation. They've raised the veil. There's no separation. There's a full awareness of oneness consciousness. It's called the Christ consciousness, because this principle of the Christ is something that Jesus embodied, and it is oneness consciousness, but it is even more than that. It is what all of that means in terms of love and peace and joy and his particular mission. So Jesus stated his mission in this way when he said, "I did not come to abolish the law of Moses, or the laws of Moses, or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish their purpose." He came to be a representative of what their whole mission was all about, which was to show a path to becoming a realized being. And he added to that quite significantly as well. And that will be unveiled in what I'm about to share with you. So he is someone who took the path less traveled, who arrived at a very exalted state, and who therefore beckons us on to do the same. He said, even the things that I do, even greater things you shall do. And he told us the kingdom of heaven was within. There were a lot of things along the way that let us know that he is serving as the great example of what it is that we're being called to do and to be. So the Easter story then teaches us about how to use our inherent higher powers, the spiritual powers available to us, within us, to participate in our own conscious evolution, to embody the cosmic Christ consciousness, and do even greater things than Jesus had done. And I think if we do even just some of the things that he's done, that's pretty amazing. So I'm going to be talking today about forgiveness, the canceling of mistakes, about the importance of every human being to this evolutionary process, and this thing called a fully realized spiritual being, mission accomplished, the resurrection. So forgiveness, the canceling of mistakes. The last words of Jesus the Christ then served as spiritual practices that we can use in our daily lives. And so today we're going to be focusing on 3 particular phrases that are in those topics that I just mentioned. And the first phrase that he said was, or first sentence was, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We've heard this, right? Many of us have heard this, maybe not everybody, but many of us have heard this one before. It's in the book of Luke, chapter 23, verse 34. And so I read through that, but I also have I took this course in Aramaic Bible study from Rocco Errico's Nora Institute some time ago. And I promised myself, because it's so rich in information from the original Aramaic book of the Bible, from which all the others were translated. So to me, it's very exciting to finally share some of these concepts. So what Rocco Errico said is the word shwak in Aramaic, which was used for forgiveness. It means not only to forgive, it means to cancel, to release, to let go. And cancel is one of the big things. We know about the release and let go, but canceling, it cancels out the belief that perpetuates the same old stuff that we keep running into. So forgiveness is about a canceling of beliefs that don't serve us. Ultimately, that's what radical forgiveness is. It cancels beliefs that run the old story so that the fullness of the light and the love and the wholeness that we are can shine through. It's a way of raising the veil. So we must let go of the people that we have been holding on to in our minds when we tell ourselves the stories of how we've been done wrong. We must let go of the anger, the resentment, the hatred, and any interest in retaliation. All of that. Jesus was a huge advocate of forgiveness because forgiveness is essential for not only being the presence of love and compassion. I mean, it is an act of compassion, but it's also important for being in the present moment fully, where our full entire spiritual power and awareness of our connection with the divine resides. The Lord's Prayer gives some instruction about this thing called forgiveness. It actually teaches that all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. When it basically says that our errors or our mistakes are forgiven as we forgive others. Forgive us our debts as we forgive those, or forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. It says it's connecting that thing of forgiveness of whenever we forgive others, it truly is self-forgiveness. We're releasing ourselves from all that poison of anger and hatred and telling that story to ourselves in our minds, or maybe to other people over and over again. And we know that holding on is poisonous. We know it's harming. We know that it can lead to illness. And so this work is so essential. And we forgive. How? We forgive by turning to the divine within, turning to God, aligning with God and what God stands for, the frequencies or the vibrations of the Most High, which is what? Love, peace, joy, inner harmony, a sense of well-being, vibrations of the Most High, aligning with that. In Jesus' time, people who were saturated, from his culture, who were saturated in the laws of Moses, actually had become to feel quite powerless over what they called sin. We call error thinking, sickness, and death, and very fearful of death, actually. And so the story of resurrection is a story in which Jesus taught that our sins, mistakes, or our errors of thinking and belief are forgivable. And not only are they forgivable, but that we have the power to cancel them, to clear them in God and with that support of universal law and divine inspiration, which is all of God. Why? Because we are individualizations of the Most High. So that's forgiveness. Very powerful, powerful spiritual practice. The other thing that Jesus demonstrated is that all people were important. They're important to him. They're important really to all of humanity. You know, you think about who was it that saved the man on the side of the road who was a wealthy man, who was elite. It was a Samaritan, somebody who people at the time, or at least some people, looked down on, and the so-called outcasts. And Jesus embraced them all and showed that all had value. You know, he would hang out with the criminals, he would hang out with the prostitutes, and he would hang out with the social elite. To him, they were all people. He wasn't interested in the external things, the appearances. He was able to look through the appearances and see the truth of who they were. So in his final moments on the cross, he was having a conversation with a criminal that was next to him. And he was supporting him. And this criminal was inspired by the state of love and the high consciousness of Jesus, the Christ. And so, and very, very much moved by Jesus's willing to forgive those who were tormenting him. And in that process, then, the criminal took the leap of faith himself, forgave himself, canceled out his own errors, and entered into a consciousness of what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven, which is within. He also called it paradise. You know, so many people have thought, well, that's someplace you go afterwards. Well, the truth is he was talking about a state of mind, a state of consciousness that we take with us even after we go, leave the body, but that we can experience while we are here in this body. So Jesus said to him, I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise in a state of high consciousness. So the resurrection story also carries with it the message that there is no need to fear death. This was a huge relief to the people of that time, as I mentioned before. And here's the interesting thing. The word that has been translated into death in English, in Aramaic, actually means to be present everywhere. Yeah, it means to be present everywhere. I don't have the exact word, but this is out of Rocco Errico's book. So yes, we do leave the body behind, and the body disintegrates and it returns to the soil. However, that we know that's important for the balancing of the earth, you know, the recycling of energy on the earth, for the balance of nature. However, our spiritual essence, or our soul, whatever you decide to call it, our true self, continues on the eternal journey of conscious evolution in the next realm. You know, in the Bible, it says there are terrestrial bodies, earthly bodies, and there are celestial bodies, spiritual bodies. So we move into that next state in a different form. And Ernest Holmes believes that because evolution is an ongoing thing eternally, that there are many celestial bodies that we will take over time. Well, who knows? The thing is that the message is there's no need to fear death, that we are eternal beings on an eternal journey, an upward upwardly mobile journey. So Jesus's parables alluded to this even before this moment. As Carolyn mentioned a little bit earlier, this thing called kingdom of heaven or the reign of God, which were the two topics that Jesus was bringing up over and over again in his parables, were all about the growth, the evolution, and the unfoldment of consciousness and what it took to support that, to participate in that ourselves, in our own evolutionary process. And it was always about giving birth to something new and something good within ourselves and therefore within our lives. This is very exciting. And you know, spring is such a great time to talk about this topic because we can see the newness springing forth all over the place as the leaves start popping out and the blossoms delight us with their colors and their varieties. So such a great time of year for this topic of newness. So the final thing that I wanted to talk about was the idea that Jesus accomplished his mission, his vision of what he, you know, the fulfillment of the purpose of all the things the prophets and Moses had taught, becoming a fully realized being. There's a story that was told by Congressman Morris Udall some time ago. After Khrushchev died, he said that Brezhnev decided that they wanted to get rid of Khrushchev's body. And so Brezhnev he began calling all the different countries, and one by one, the countries were saying, no, no, this would not be good for public opinion or whatever. And so he finally called Prime Minister Golda Meir. And she said, yes, she was willing. And so she gave him these instructions, and listen to this. She said that the Russians must bring him in the middle of the night and bury him in a remote spot. And then she gave this warning. She said, however, I warn you that this country has the world's highest resurrection rate. So I love that story because it just reminds me of this idea of resurrection, this idea of the accomplishment of Jesus's mission. He alluded to that his mission was fulfilled, that he had become realized, self-realized, when he said, it is finished. Those were some of his final words. That was in John chapter 19, verse 30. Jesus knew that as a spiritually realized being, fully realized being, that he had full authority over his life. He even had the authority to lay down his life and to take it up again. And that he had the ability to see beyond appearances and to see the truth of who we are, which is so much more than this body. Therefore, he knew when he said, I and the Father are one, he knew that he and God are one. And he also knew that about us as well. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in our hearts as our very own being. So ultimately, we must be the ones to choose. Last week, we talked about commitment to transformation. We must be the ones to choose to invest in the path less traveled. Be the ones who are willing to do the forgiveness work. And so I'd like to, in this moment, invite us to engage in a practice of self-forgiveness. And so to begin with, I'd like you to identify, that division in this country is kind of like a really big topic right now. So that might be one you might want to take up, or there might be something else that is in your heart. But if it is about division is about separation, dividing your family, division in your family, or division in your community, or division in this country. What part have you played in fomenting or worsening the division through either inaction, omission, harsh words, impatience, or misunderstanding? So I invite you to close your eyes and let's take this into meditation so that we can release it. Get in a comfortable position, close your eyes, and begin to breathe deeply and slowly. Begin to scan your body for any areas where guilt, shame, embarrassment, or regret may be hiding. Any place where there is tightness or pain or discomfort, those are clues that the body is holding on to something. Take a moment and locate these emotions then in your body. It could also be a heaviness as well as a tightness. Wherever they are, these heavy emotions, just identify them. And what shape are they? What color? Just observe. You can choose to forgive yourself. You can choose to learn, to evolve, and to blossom. Say to yourself and to those places in your body where the tightness or the pain is, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And then repeat after me. This is a beautiful prayer by Ernest Holmes. And Michelle, I'm going to invite you to do this to support me. Okay. The light of the Spirit within me.
The light of the Spirit within me
Dissolves every obstacle in my path.
dissolves every obstacle in my path.
Everything unlike my true nature disappears.
Everything unlike my true nature disappears.
My entire thought, will, and imagination
My entire thought, will, and imagination
are saturated with the presence,
are saturated with the presence,
the divine
the
presence.
divine presence.
So just imagine yourself being saturated with the divine presence. What does that mean? And then he goes on to say, behold, I make all things new. Michelle?
I said it too.
Behold,
Behold, I
make all things new. Right. That is the declaration of the divine presence within us, which is our true identity. So continue to saturate yourself in the vibrations of the divine, the vibrations of the Most High. Love, peace, joy. Breathe love. Inhale and exhale love into those areas of tightness. And with each exhale, release the emotions and the beliefs that cause them consciously. Breathe in, breathe out, watching them dissolve one by one until they're all gone from the body. Continuing to breathe love until they're all gone from the body. With each breath, rising in love, rising in peace, rising in joy, rising in God. And now say to yourself, thank you
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you.
Give yourselves a little extra love. And then let's end by acknowledging the work that we've done together as community by bowing to each other and saying, Namaste. Mwah. Love you. Love you, everybody. Good work. Good work. Okay, so now I would like to bring back our beloved Sharon Bousquet.